Hey, hey everybody, welcome to Reading the Bible to Cats. I um, was just lounging on the sofa and I thought Henry looked so cute. He's on the sofa, but he's like on top of a pillow. And I thought, oh, this is a good time for a video. I excuse me, I was going to go for a walk this afternoon, but then the sofa sucked me in and I just took a nap. I really need to exercise though. Oh well, maybe my body needed the rest. But anyway, let us go to Judges chapter 2. I'm excited about it. Like I said, Judges is going to be intense, as a lot of what we read in the Hebrew scriptures will be. But they don't call it biblical for nothing. I mean, there's a lot of drama in this story, but whoever said drama was bad, you know what I mean? Life is full of drama, and any good book has some drama and conflict and crisis, and it wouldn't be an interesting story if it didn't have that. But let's go ahead and read. Let's pounce on it, right, Henry? Let's see if we can. It's just cute. Just cute, Henry. Are you showing us how to live in a state of cuddly peace or cuddly shalom? Maybe. I think it's cute the way he tucks his little paws under himself there, kind of like a turtle. Okay, let me now try and position the camera. Oh boy. Okay. Well, that'll do. Let's go to Judges chapter 2 from the Archaeological Study Bible, NIV. And I'll read. The angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, quote, I brought you up out of Egypt and led you into the land that I swore to give to your forefathers. I said, I will never break my covenant with you. And you shall not make a covenant with the people of this land, but you shall break down their altars. Yet you have disobeyed me. Why have you done this? Now, therefore, I tell you that I will not drive them out before you. They will be thorns in your sides, and their gods will be a snare to you. Unquote. When the angel of the Lord had spoken these things to all the Israelites, the people wept aloud, and they called that place Bochim. There they offered sacrifices to the Lord. After Joshua had dismissed the Israelites, they went to take possession of the land, each to his own inheritance. The people served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him and who had seen all the great things the Lord had done for Israel. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110, and they buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnah Heres in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gash. After that whole generation had been gathered to their fathers, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and served the Baals. They forsook the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshipped various gods of the peoples around them. They provoked the Lord to anger because they forsook him and served Baal and the Ashtaroths. In his anger against Israel, the Lord handed them over to raiders who plundered them. He sold them to their enemies all around, whom they were no longer able to resist. Whenever Israel went out to fight, the hand of the Lord was against them to defeat them, just as he had sworn to them. They were in great distress. Then the Lord raised up judges who saved them out of the hands of these raiders. Yet they would not listen to their judges, but prostituted themselves to other gods and worshiped them. Unlike their fathers, they quickly turned from the way in which their fathers had walked, the way of obedience to the Lord's commands. Whenever the Lord raised up a judge for them, he was with the judge and saved them out of the hands of their enemies, as long as the judge lived. For the Lord had compassion on them as they groaned under those who oppressed and afflicted them. But when the judge died, the people returned to ways even more corrupt than those of their fathers, following other gods and serving and worshiping them. They refused to give up their evil practices and stubborn ways. Therefore, the Lord was very angry with Israel and said, quote, "Because this nation has violated the covenant that I laid down for their forefathers and has not listened to me, I will no longer drive out before them any of the nations Joshua left when he died. I will use them to test Israel and see whether they will keep the way of the Lord and walk in it as their forefathers did." The Lord had allowed those nations to remain. He did not drive them out at once by giving them into the hands of Joshua. Okay, everybody, that's the end of Judges chapter 2. That's interesting to me because I was kind of wondering why the nations hadn't been driven out, like the Lord hadn't driven out all the nations. You could kind of tell, and things were going to happen and there would be problems. It's like, oh. But then he says, that, where was that verse? Oh, 22, I will use them to test Israel and see whether they will keep the way of the Lord and walk in it as their forefathers did. Yeah. Yeah, the God of Israel doesn't, doesn't want his people to worship false gods that aren't gods, idols that, I mean, it's, yeah, that makes sense. Interesting. And of course, Baal is really yucky. I can put it that way. Well, here, I'll read some study notes. I mean, Baal is basically, I would say, is, Satan. And of course, all those false gods would fall into the category of demonic, I would say. But let's see if there's something from the study note. Let's see. Okay, verses 11 through, chapter 2, verses 11 through chapter 3, verse 6. the cycle of the judges is set forth in the abstract in this section, it is notable that these individuals were not principally civil magistrates, but military deliverers. In fact, many of them seem to have been singularly unfitted to be what we would today call judges. See the Judges period on page 344. Well, I'm kind of curious about that. This might be a longer video because I might want to read a few things about this. Let's see. 344. But maybe I already read that. Oh, I think I already read that note. That's in the last video, so we don't have to read that. But yeah, I'm interested. It's like, yeah, the people he picked were interesting because there was always it seemed like some weakness or flaw, and yet, the Lord used them as deliverers. I guess they seem like perhaps unlikely deliverers on the face of it. You maybe would meet them and not necessarily think they would be, someone that would be a judge or a deliverer. But I guess that's how God works. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, interesting, the people that the Lord chooses. And I think we'll see that as we read Judges. I'm thinking of Samson, Deborah, Gideon. Gideon? Yeah, Gideon. I don't know, there's always something about them. Well, we'll find out too. But it makes me think, in some way it's kind of messianic as well, prophetically speaking, because it's like he chooses the unlikely person to be the deliverer, the person who you don't think necessarily is it, or it makes me think of Messiah ultimately, or Yeshua, Jesus. And it was as if, wait a minute, this guy, he was born and he's from Galilee, and or can anything good come out of Nazareth? That kind of thing, where kind of unexpected person. I've got Custer on me right now, and he is meowing, and he really wants to give me a hug, and he's going to step on the microphone. I don't know if you can hear him. Let's see if you can hear him purring. Do you want to? Oh, he's rubbing the microphone. He's rubbing the microphone. Okay, there might be some static. There possibly will be static because he's headbutting the microphone. Okay, well, let's see. There might be another. Let me read another study note about Judges 2:13. The Canaanites and Phoenicians worshiped the god Baal, quote unquote, Lord, who. Okay, Custer's really headbutting the microphone and rubbing his chin on it. I don't know what that's going to sound like on the video. But you better not bite into it. Okay. Alright. I don't know. I guess he's scratching his chin using the microphone. Okay. Don't turn it off. Don't turn it off. Okay. So, back to the note. It says, what does it say? The Canaanites and Phoenicians worshiped the god Baal, quote unquote, Lord, who was variously known as the son of Dagon and the son of El. He was called Hadad in Aram, Syria, and Adad in Babylonia. As the god of fertility, both human and agricultural, he is pictured as standing on a bull, a popular symbol of fertility and strength. See 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 28. The storm cloud was viewed as his chariot. thunder as his voice and lightning as his spear and arrows. Ritual prostitution and sometimes even child sacrifice were characteristic of Baal worship. See Jeremiah 19, verse 5. See Baal and the fertility cults on page 1414. I might read that. Oops, we lost Henry. Oh no. Now you're just seeing what I call a sea cucumber. Because you can't, I wouldn't call this a loaf, but I'm going to show you. He looks like a sea cucumber. Hold on, let me find a sea cucumber for you on my phone, and then we'll get back to the study now. Sea cucumber. Yeah, look. Doesn't he look like a sea cucumber? Oops. Or these are sea cucumbers. Yeah, I think he looks like a sea cucumber right now. Oh well. Sorry about the sea cucumber image. Well, back to this note. I'm interested in it. Yeah, so child sacrifice. I mean, can you imagine? Um, you know, it's pretty, that's like, wow, they really, it was like a descent into yuckiness. Okay, so let me keep reading this note. See Baal and the fertility cults. We'll read that. Storm gods, storm imagery, and theophany. Oh, and there's another note on page 808. Okay, we'll read that too. The Ugaritic text of the myth of Baal. Oh, there are a lot of studying notes on page 905. Prostitution in the ancient world. Oh my gosh, there are tons of study notes. This video could be an hour long. On page 284, and human sacrifice in the ancient Near East on page 182. Okay, we'll take a look at some things that are mentioned here. Ashtaroths, or female deities, included Ashtaroth, consort of Baal, and Asherah, a consort of El, the chief god of the Canaanite pantheon. Asheroth was thought to be the beautiful goddess of war and fertility, associated with the evening star. She was worshipped as Ishtar in Babylonia, Astarte in Aram, Astarte or Aphrodite by the Greeks, and Venus by the Romans. Worship of the Ashtaroths involved extremely lewd practices. See 1 Kings chapter 14, verse 24, 2 Kings 23:7. And then there's something else here mentioned, but I can't pronounce it. Okay, so there are a lot of notes here. I'm very curious about all this, and it's already a long video. And you're just seeing a sea cucumber, but let me go to one note just to begin with and see. Trying to figure out which one to read. Let's read the thing about human sacrifice on page 284. Oh, that's a happy thought. 284. Okay, let me go look and see that note. Maybe I already read it. Wait a minute. Oh, 284. Oh, here. Prostitution in the ancient world. Okay. Deuteronomy 23. Prostitution was known throughout the ancient world, while some who practiced the trade worked independently. Others, such as slaves, were forced into it. In Mesopotamia, it was actually possible to adopt a girl and then hire her out as a prostitute. There is considerable controversy over the so-called temple prostitute. Herodotus, in his histories, recorded that every Babylonian woman was required to prostitute herself at least once in the temple of Ishtar, but the reliability of this claim is disputed. Most scholars agree that sacred prostitution was part of the ritual of the fertility cult, but some argue against this claim, suggesting that women sometimes prostituted themselves to obtain money to pay a vow, or that temples simply used whoredom as a source of income. In the Greco-Roman world, prostitution was also associated with the temples of Aphrodite, especially at Corinth, according to the ancient Greek historian Strabo. But the nature of this prostitution is uncertain. It is unlikely, however, that temples use such women only as sources of income with no religious link to the function of the temple itself. The promiscuous act was probably regarded as some kind of sacred rite, even as it catered to the lusts of the people. The weight of evidence suggests that sacred prostitution was real. Biblical texts provide evidence for temple prostitution. The practice is associated with pagan worship in Hosea chapter 4, verse 14, a passage that condemns men who had encounters with the sacred prostitutes at the shrines and who offered sacrifices there. Prostitution is often used in the Old Testament as a metaphor for idolatry. Exodus 34:15 through 16, Leviticus 17 through 7, which may strengthen the connection between temple prostitution and the idolatrous practices of other people. Prostitution or harlotry in any form was forbidden to the Israelites. Leviticus 19, verse 29, Deuteronomy 23, verse 17. Okay. Yep, that's the end of that study note. Oh, and then there's, sorry, I read the thing on prostitution in the ancient world, not human sacrifice. Where's the thing on human sacrifice? Yeah, let's see. Oh, that's page 182. Let's go there and look at that study note. I sometimes just like to remind myself of the historical context here. Oh, yeah. Here's the human sacrifice in the ancient Near East. Leviticus 20. Numerous archaeological discoveries in ancient, including several Old Testament texts. Sorry, everyone, I'm trying to figure out the camera so you can look at the sea cucumber. Okay, back to the note. Numerous archaeological discoveries in ancient, including several Old Testament texts, record various examples of human sacrifice that took place throughout the ancient Near East. For example, a relief on a tower in southern Spain dating to approximately 500 BC. Ew. You know, it's hard to read this actually, but it's like, it's so yucky, but it kind of gives you an idea as to why the God of Israel was like, no, don't do that. I mean, it was detestable, the practices. Okay, I'll read it. But, you know, just be aware it might be triggering or graphic. So, yeah, trigger warning. So, a relief on a tower in southern Spain dating to approximately 500 BC gruesomely depicts a child cradled in a bowl about to be sacrificed as part of a banquet feast to a two-headed monster. Excavators have uncovered a large sacred cemetery dating to 400 to 200 BC in the Phoenician city of Carthage in North Africa. They estimate that the Carthaginians buried more than 20,000 urns here, each holding the remains of one or two children, most of them aged 4 years or younger. Inscription on the urns indicate that all of these infants and toddlers were sacrificed to a Phoenician deity. During times of national emergency, children were sacrificed in an attempt to placate various deities. Examples by the king of Moab, as recorded in 2 Kings chapter 3, verses 26 through 27. Royal tombs excavated in Ur, Mesopotamia, and Egypt contain the remains of ritually slain attendants intended to accompany the deceased into the afterlife. Children were used in Mesopotamia as foundation sacrifices, a practice whereby a sacrificial victim was interred in the foundation of a building or gateway for the purpose of affording magical protection for the site. Several authors who wrote during the 1,000-year period from the 5th century BC to the 5th century AD attest that child sacrifice was a Phoenician custom. Tertullian, an early church father who lived in North Africa around AD 160 to 225, decried the continuing practice of child sacrifice. Some Israelites also are known to have made human sacrifices. Ahaz, 2 Kings 16, verse 3, 2 Chronicles 28, verse 3, and the people of Israel and Judah, 2 Kings 17, verse 17, sacrificed their children, a practice God condemned as detestable. Deuteronomy 12, verse 31, Jeremiah 32, verse 35. Israelites were known to sacrifice their sons or daughters, quote, in the fire, unquote, to Molech in the valley of Ben Hinnom. 2 Kings chapter 23, verse 10, Jeremiah 32, verse 35, quote, in the fire, unquote, rendered in the New American Standard Bible with the ambiguous phrase passed through the fire, is clarified in Jeremiah 7, verse 31, which records that the people, quote, burned their sons and daughters in the fire, unquote, both NIV and NASB, in the valley of Ben Hinnom. Considerable controversy surrounds the Molech offerings. Some scholars argue that Molech was not a deity at all, but a type of sacrifice in which children were dedicated as temple prostitutes. But biblical evidence clearly indicates that Molech was an Ammonite deity. 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 7. Abraham was willing at God's command to sacrifice Isaac, Genesis 22, but God, at the last moment, provided a substitute offering, highlighting both his own ability to provide and Abraham's faithfulness, as well as implicitly expressing his disapproval of human sacrifice. God condemned this practice not only because it was horrible, unthinkable from our 21st century perspective, but also because it defiled his sanctuary and profaned his holy name. Leviticus 18, verse 21, Leviticus 20, verses 2 through 5. Because of this and other sins, God had expelled the majority of the original pagan inhabitants of the Promised Land. The Israelites were required to keep his commandments, lest the land, quote, vomit, unquote, them out as well. Chapter 20, verses 22 through 23. Okay, everybody. Well, I mean, that is what was going on there. You know what I mean? It's like it's pretty horrible. So it's like, of course, the God of Israel would want to get rid of all that. You know what I mean? It's like, ew. I mean, you can't educate that. You can't. I mean, it's just evil. So it's like that's why he was sending the the Israelites apart or the Israelis apart. You know what I mean? It's funny how in the Bible, people living in Israel were called the Israelites, and today, they're called Israelis. Anyway, but yeah, so that's the context, the historical context of what was going on in the nations around there, in Canaan. Um, let's see if there's any other. The gods, let's see, were characteristic of Baal worship. Storm god, Baal and the fertility cults on page 1414. Guess we can take a look at that. Sorry, you're just seeing a sea cucumber. Oh, look, his head popped up. I'm afraid we're going to lose a kitty, though. Henry, would you mind turning around? Sorry about my filming, everyone. I'm on the sofa and the camera doesn't want to stay put. Let's see if I can find that other study note. 1414. And then after all is said and done, I'll say a prayer. 1414. Oh, he's back to being a sea cucumber. Okay, hold on. I'm turning pages. Okay, Baal and the fertility cults. I hope this is interesting. I don't know. I'm interested in it. I just like to have the historical context because it kind of really makes things clear, as to why God, Hashem, does what he does. Okay, why he do what he do? We're going to find out. Hosea 2. Oh, this is Baal and the fertility cults. The worship of the Canaanite storm god Baal was an object of singular condemnation by Hosea and other prophets. The vehemence of the prophetic condemnation of the cult reflects just how extensive and pernicious the problem was. We learn about Baal first through biblical texts. Examples include Numbers 25, the narrative of Baal of Peor, showing the prominence of sacred prostitution within the cult. 1 Kings 18, the contest involving Elijah and the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, illustrating the popularity of the Baal cults and its use of self-laceration for demonstrating devotion to Baal. Oh, okay, and it is I who's speaking, not the study note, but yeah, self-laceration, I think they would just cut themselves, Okay, and Hosea 2, verse 8 indicates that the people associated Baal with prosperity, and verses 16 through 17 suggest that many people identified Baal and Yahweh almost as one and the same. Wow, that it is I who's speaking, not the study note, but wow, that's like a major bad theology. We also learn a great deal about Baal from ancient texts in the form of cuneiform tablets, especially those from Ugarit and from Phoenician inscriptions. The hymns and epic poems of Ugarit provide us with something of the theology of the Baal cult. The basic meaning of the word Baal, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't know if it's Baal or Baal. Baal. I don't know. Is Lord. And this appropriately suggests Baal's importance in Canaanite religion. He was called Prince Baal, Lord of the Earth. Although the god El was nominally the supreme deity in Ugaritic mythology, Baal purportedly exercised a direct role in ruling the pantheon and effectively supplanted El. Baal's consort, partner, is usually identified as the goddess Anat, although sometimes another goddess, Asherah, assumes that role. Baal was declared king after having supposedly defeated the god Yam, or sea, in battle. In another myth, he was slain by the god Mot, death, but with the aid of Anat, he revived and defeated Mot. Not only was Baal exalted as a chief deity, but he also functioned specifically as the Canaanite storm god, the, quote, rider of the clouds, unquote. The birth of healthy offspring and the staving off of famine were major concerns in the ancient Near East, and consequently, fertility took on religious significance. In Egypt, the god Osiris was identified with the Nile and its perennial flooding, the basis of Egypt's agricultural life. In Mesopotamia, the cult of Tammuz and his consort, Inanna, represented the power of fertility and included the practice of sacred prostitution. For Israel, an agrarian society situated in a dry climate, the veneration of a god who could send rain proved to be an irresistible enticement. One Canaanite myth attributed agricultural fertility to the, quote, rain of Baal, unquote. Hosea chapter 2, verse 5 indicates the acceptance of Baal's role at every level of life. Food and water for sustenance, wool and linen for material goods, and oil and drink for cultic rituals or personal luxury. Although sacred prostitution was not a part of every fertility cult, Israel incorporated this aspect as well. Hosea 4, verses 10 through 14. And the sexual temptation of the cult proved too much for many Israelites to withstand. The situation was exacerbated by an enormous number of local shrines where the Baals were worshipped under various titles such as Baal Pur, Baal Haman, Baal Zaphon, Baal of Lebanon, or Baal of Sidon. See Hosea 2, verses 13 and 17. This phenomenon is attested by the wide variety of representations of Baal in Phoenician inscriptions. The fact that the Israelites identified Baal with Yahweh is telling. Although Baal worship, viewed from a distance, was obviously horrendous, those who were involved in it were so influenced by the dominant culture that they remained convinced that they were devout and orthodox followers of the Lord when they were all the while worshiping Baal. Ooh, okay, that's the end of that study note. Yeah, that's like the big boo-boo time. It's like, oops, that's a big boo-boo they're making. But yeah, that's what we would call really bad theology. And also pretty demonic. You know what I mean? So that's the context of what's going on and why the God of Israel is like, you know, you need to be separated from, you need to be holy, like set apart, not practicing those things, not worshiping those, you know, evil basically, or those false gods. And, you know, I mean, it makes sense when you know the context that it's just yuckiness throughout. See if there's anything else. Well, there was that study note on storm gods, storm imagery, and theophany on page 808. I'm sure you might be falling asleep at this point because, I mean, this is a really, probably my longest video. But, you know, I decided to do this channel, like I said, because it gets me, it keeps me in the Word. And I'm kind of just interested in all this. Okay, this one's not so long. I'll just read this one and then say a prayer. Storm gods, storm imagery, and theophany. And this is about Psalm 18. Well, I don't know if I want to read this one now that I'm saying it. Well, I guess I can. Psalm 18. I do love Psalm 18. It was a common practice for peoples in the ancient world to identify their deities with observable, awe-inspiring natural phenomenon. As Canaan was a land of tempests, the high-ranking deities of the Canaanite pantheons were storm gods. Teshub of the Hittites, Hadad of the Arameans, and Baal of Ugarit. Storm gods were conceived of as vigorous warriors, revered for their ability to usher in the rains needed for fertility, and feared for their destructive power unleashed in the storm. Religious iconography frequently portrays storm gods as riding on beasts while wielding weapons in their hands. Israel's God also appears in the storm. Indeed, the Old Testament fully fleshes out the concept that God controls the storms. Although Yahweh is omnipresent and fills the earth, Psalm 139, verse 7 through 8, Jeremiah 23, verses 23 through 24, he appears in the world as a physical, divine presence at specific times and locations. This is the meaning of theophany, an appearance of God. The creation, which is ordered by Yahweh and submits to his will, Luke 8, verses 22 through 25, at times becomes the vehicle of his manifestation. Psalms 18, verses 7 through 15. The raging wind is depicted as his chariot. Ezekiel 1, verses 4 through 28. Habakkuk 3, verse 8. Peals of thunder, his voice. Job 37, verses 1 through 5. Psalms 29, verses 3 through 9. John 12, verses 28 through 29. Revelation 10, verses 3 through 4. And lightning bolts, his weapons. Psalm 18, verses 14. Habakkuk 3, verse 11. The appearance of God in the storm may be either to save, Deuteronomy 4, verses 33 through 35, or to judge, Micah 1, 3 through 5, Habakkuk 3, 3 through 15. Theophany is only temporary because a full revelation of God's terrifying glory cannot be endured by humans. Exodus 20, verse 18 through 19, Exodus 33, 18 through 23. God appeared in the storm to make a covenant at Sinai by which Israel became his own possession. Exodus 19, verses 16 through 19. At the end of time, God will return to the earth in the person of, and the study note says Jesus Christ, and I'll say Yeshua HaMashiach, riding on the clouds with the sound of the trumpet to judge the living and the dead. Matthew 24, verses 30 through 31, 1 Thessalonians 4, verses 16 through 17, and Revelation 1, verse 7. Okay, well that's interesting. Now you all are asleep by now. Oh my gosh, this is the longest video ever. But before I go, and then I'll say a prayer, I was really intrigued by the first verse, the angel of the Lord. It says, verse 1, Judges chapter 2, speaking of theophany, the angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I brought you up out of Egypt and led you into the land that I swore to give to your forefathers. I said, I will never break my covenant with you, and you shall not make a covenant with the people of this land, but you shall break down their altars. Yet you have disobeyed me. Why have you done this? Now therefore I tell you that I will not drive them out before you. They will be thorns in your sides, and their gods will be a snare to you. I find that very interesting. Just the reference itself, the angel of the Lord. An angel, is often, can mean messenger of the Lord, or the angel of the Lord. It's like, okay, it sounds like the Lord talking, you know what I mean? It sounds like the God of Israel is speaking, and yet the reference is that it's the angel of the Lord. So my question is, who do you think the angel of the Lord is? Let's see if there's any note about that. I'm looking. Sorry, it was such a long video. But I don't think there's a study note on that. Well, yeah, tell me who you think the angel of the Lord is. I mean, in a sense, to me, it's like a pre-incarnate. Um, sorry, I hear a lot of activity in the litter box over there. I don't know what's going on. Um, like a pre-incarnate Messiah, like a pre-incarnate Yeshua. I wonder who you think the angel of the Lord is. Do you think it's, you know, yeah, let me know if you have any thoughts about that. But yeah, that's all, everybody. Now I'm really rambling. And this is going to be like an hour long. Oh my gosh. If you've made it to the end of this video, I applaud you. Plus, you're not really seeing anything cute except a sea cucumber. And there's one over there playing with the carpet. Let me say a prayer. Lord, thank you for your word. And I pray for everybody who's watching and listening. I pray for their protection, that you would keep them safe, Lord, and give them wisdom. And especially if, like I've said, if they're living in a dangerous area or a war-torn area, or if they're under the threat of war, that you would be their shield and buckler, that you would be their hedge of protection and keep them safe. And I think of Israel, and just pray for protection for your people and the animals, from any threat. We just pray for the peace of Jerusalem and the peace of Israel, and ask you just to put your angels around the people and to protect them under the shadow of your wings. And I pray for the hurting people, or in the grieving people in Israel, and the hurting people and grieving people in Gaza who need you, who need the God of Israel too, and the Messiah, that you would draw near to them. We pray for peace, your shalom, your peace. And, oh, there was something else I was going to pray for. Forgot what I was going to. Oh, I pray for the hostages, Lord, that you would draw near to them by means of your Holy Spirit, and that you would enfold them in your loving arms and free them spiritually. And I do pray for those who are still alive, that you would free them physically. And I pray for people who are struggling with illness, that you give them a supernatural strength. And we know that your joy is our strength. So I just pray for that you would give them joy, and that just a healing touch. And I pray all these things in Yeshua's name, Yeshua HaMashiach, in Jesus' name. Amen, everybody. Oh my gosh, guys, this is like the longest video ever. If you have actually watched this entire video, leave a comment and let me know, because I'll be really impressed. All right, everybody. Bye.